Hi, I'm Clever Ghoul, but you can call me Nikki. And y'all, it's It's mid-July, which means it's time to get into the Halloween spirit, and I've got a lot of projects that I'm really itching to get into so that we can all be ready for October. We're kicking off Halloween season with transforming a Frozen Dollhouse into a spooky, Dracula-esque castle. And it's gonna light up with 2 different lighting options. And this is such an easy project. It's mostly just spray painting and then adding a few finishing touches that are pretty beginner friendly, so I think anyone could do this. With that being said, let's get into it. For materials, you'll need the following. A dollhouse. Again, I chose this Frozen Dollhouse castle. You can see here how it opens up. It's not a huge dollhouse, like it's not Barbie Dreamhouse size, but it's not super small either. But you can pick any size you want. I wanted something where I could fit lighting into it, and it was kind of more of a statement without being too big. Sandpaper, sand, Krylon satin finish, Krylon Fusion all-in-one metallic aluminum, and satin black. Dark metallic silver paint and a brighter silver paint, paintbrushes, mini bats, B7000, gauzy black fabric, a hot glue gun, moss, and then I used 2 different lighting options. For a flickering light effect, I used these LED candles, and for just a straight red glow, I used these miniature LED red lights. As always, I will have everything linked in the description, and these are affiliate links, which means if you use them, I get a small commission. So if you do, thank you so much. I started off by roughly sanding the outside of the dollhouse. This will just help the paint adhere a little bit better, and as a bonus, it adds a little bit of a rough texture, which I want because I want this to look a little more rocky and realistic. Speaking of texture, once I was done sanding, I took it outside, sprayed the dollhouse with a coat of Krylon satin finish spray, and then sprinkled sand all over the area, and then left it to dry for about 15 to 20 minutes, came back out and did another spray of the sealant and let that dry for a little bit. Again, this is just adding a rocky, rough texture to the outside that I think the castle really needs. Once that was fully dry, I primed the castle with metallic aluminum spray paint. I would do 1 coat, let it sit for a while, then come back and do another, and I repeated this process about 3 times to just make sure everything was really covered. After the silver was completely dry, I repeated the process but with the satin black spray paint. This took about 4 coats. I left that outside for a few hours, and once everything was completely dry, I hit it again with a coat of the satin finish spray to seal and lock in anything before we added more to it. And then I let that dry overnight. The next day I wanted to add some dimension back in, so I pulled out some dark silver paint and dry brushed it all over the castle, focusing especially on the more textured areas. The trick for this is to dip your brush into the paint and wipe off about 90% of the excess before applying it onto your surface. This just helps make a really fine, soft layer that you can slowly build up and add more to. Again, it's always easier to add more than to take away. Once that was dry, I pulled out a bright silver paint and did the same process again, but this time I really was trying to focus on where highlights might be. I didn't want to go all over like I did with the first darker paint, so I took my time and just lightly went in different areas to add a little pop here and there and draw your eye in. Then I decided the handles on all the doors were looking a little bare, so I went in with the darker silver first, did a light coat, dabbed off any excess, and then popped in some more of that bright silver on top just to give it a more realistic metallic look. After adding in all the mid-tones and highlights with acrylic paint, I did take it back outside again to spray it with satin finish spray so that everything was locked in before we continued on. Now we're on to the windows. I want to have lights in this castle eventually, but I didn't want the inside with all the graphics to show up, and I didn't want to paint the inside black either because then the lights won't show up as well. So I decided a way around this was to make some curtains that would go in all of the windows and doors. I used this gauzy black fabric that you could kind of tug on and manipulate so that there were runs and holes in it. This would give the curtains a little bit more of a run-down, haunted look. I would cut a piece to size, add a hot glue around the border of the window it was going on, and then carefully lay it down and press it into the glue. You want to be extremely careful here because it's very, very easy to burn yourself, so go slowly and let gravity do most of the work for you, just letting the fabric kind of fall and meld into that glue. And as it dries, maybe start to tap it lightly so that you don't burn yourself. I did this on all of the windows and doors, and I saved the center door for last because it posed a little bit of a problem. This dollhouse opens from the middle, and I need to be able to open the dollhouse still so that I can put lighting inside. But I don't want a gaping hole in the middle. So what I did instead was I cut a piece of this black fabric, prepared it the way I had previously, and I took hot glue and applied it to only one side of the doors, going up a little higher than before and a bit lower so it really covered the whole area. This way, the curtain was completely secured on one side, and when I close the dollhouse, I can go in that little hole in the middle and push the rest of it up onto the other sides, and it still looks like a curtain. So it's easy for me to get in there and fix the lighting and not have to worry about having a big ugly gap there. After the curtains are in, it's time to add in little details. I added these teeny tiny little bats above the doors in the middle section of the castle and in between the windows on the lower level. All I did was put down a drop of B7000 and lightly place the bat on top. Once it was positioned how I wanted, I would hold it down for a few seconds and then I let everything dry for about 30 minutes. I also took a moment here to add some furniture pads to the bottom of this castle. I don't want it to scratch up any tables or anything that I put it on, so I just wanted to see how that would look before moving on. Lastly, I knew I wanted to put moss all over this castle and I wanted to start at the base. Now I had to be careful when I put this moss down because again, I need to make sure that I'm able to open up the castle, and if I had moss all over the base too close to the doors, I wouldn't be able to open anything. So taking that into consideration, I put moss all around the base very carefully. Once I was satisfied with that, I went in and started slowly adding it up the walls and around the roofs and just adding more detail here and there. And then I was finished, which means it's time for the reveal. Here it is! Like I said before, I couldn't decide what lighting to go with, so I gave myself two options of flickering candlelight or solid red light. These little lights are just sitting inside. I just have to open the door, turn on all the lights, and then close them. And I just have 1 or 2 lights on each level. I'm also not sure which one I like better. Sometimes I really like the flickering light because it gives a haunted, spooky effect, but also the glowing red just really gives Dracula vampire scary castle, and I love that. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I've been looking for a Frozen Dollhouse for so long because I think they work so well for this type of project. So I was so thrilled to finally do this, and I love how it turned out. The texture turned out perfectly, and adding in the mid-tones and highlights of those silver paints really helped make it pop a bit more. And I love all the little subtle details, like the little bats. I could have gone and put in more. I didn't really want to hit you over the head with it. Instead, I wanted it to be more subtle, something that if you see, you're kind of like, oh my god, look at the little bats. I love the torn curtains and the moss, and I think all of it together just is very successful and makes a perfect haunted castle. If you did this at home, what kind of dollhouse would you transform and what kind of details would you add to it? I would love to know, so please tell me all about it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!